Welcome to Sleep Easy, where we invite you to unwind and let go of the day's busyness. I'm grateful you've chosen to spend this quiet moment with us. Tonight's story is called The Moonlit Haven. But before we begin, take a deep breath, close your eyes gently, and feel each breath release the tension from your body, melting away the stress of the day, and letting your whole self drift into relaxation. Now, as you settle into the calm rhythm of your breathing, let us guide you into a world of mystery and beauty. Here, the night is gentle, stars are shimmering softly, and time seems to stand still. Join us on this journey through whispers of the starlit garden, as worries fade and dreams await. The late summer air carried a comforting coolness as Claire Marlowe stepped onto the well-worn path behind her family's home. The woods stretched before her, a labyrinth of shadows and moonlit clearings, their tranquility offering the only solace she had found since her father's passing. Tonight, like so many nights before, she sought the quiet company of the trees. As she walked, the crunch of leaves underfoot was her only companion. The world seemed asleep, save for the occasional rustle of a nocturnal creature in the underbrush. Claire paused at her favorite spot, a clearing where the trees parted to reveal the sky. Here, the stars shone like scattered diamonds, their light casting a silvery glow over the mossy ground. She closed her eyes, letting the serenity wash over her. Then, she heard it. A whisper. It was faint, almost imperceptible, carried on the wind like a secret meant only for her. Claire's eyes snapped open, her heart quickening. She turned, scanning the trees for any sign of another presence. The woods were still, their shadows undisturbed. "Who's there?" she called, her voice barely above a murmur. The whisper came again, clearer this time, though the words were indistinct. It seemed to emanate from deeper within the forest, beyond the path she normally dared to tread. A shiver ran down her spine, but curiosity tugged at her more insistently than fear. Against her better judgment, Claire stepped off the path, pushing through the undergrowth. The whisper grew louder, guiding her like a thread through the darkness. The air grew cooler, the earthy scent of the woods mingling with something unfamiliar, a faint, sweet aroma like blooming jasmine. After what felt like an eternity, Claire found herself standing before an ancient oak tree. Its trunk was massive, its gnarled branches stretching skyward like twisted arms. She had passed this tree countless times on her walks, but tonight it seemed different. She stepped closer, drawn to a hollow in the trunk. Inside, something glinted faintly in the moonlight. With trembling fingers, Claire reached in and pulled out a small, weathered envelope. It was sealed with wax, the imprint of a crescent moon pressed into its surface. Her breath caught. The whisper had stopped. The forest was silent once more, as though holding its breath. Claire turned the envelope over in her hands, her mind racing. The paper felt fragile, as though it might crumble if handled too roughly. Who had left it here? And why did it feel as though it had been waiting for her? As she broke the seal and unfolded the letter, the faint scent of jasmine grew stronger. The ink was faded, the handwriting elegant and flowing. To the one who hears the call, your journey begins where the stars align. Seek Evelyn, for she holds the key. Trust the path, even when it leads into shadow. Moonlit Haven awaits. The words sent a chill through her. Claire looked up, her eyes scanning the forest, but the trees stood silent and unmoving. A sense of both wonder and unease settled over her. Tucking the letter into her coat, she turned and made her way back to the path. The woods seemed different now, their silence heavy with secrets. For the first time in years, Claire felt a spark of something she couldn't quite name, hope, perhaps, or adventure. As she stepped back into the clearing and looked up at the stars, she knew one thing for certain: her life, so long defined by grief and routine, was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. Claire sat at her small kitchen table, the letter spread out before her. The soft glow of a single lamp bathed the paper in warm light, but the words written on it still seemed otherworldly. She traced her fingers over the elegant handwriting. Seek Evelyn. The name was unfamiliar, but something about it felt significant. Moonlit Haven, stars aligning, a journey into shadows, none of it made sense. And yet, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that the letter was meant for her. Who had left it in the hollow of the oak tree? How had they known she would find it? A soft knock on the window startled her. She turned sharply, her heart racing, but saw nothing outside but the faint sway of tree branches in the wind. Shaking her head, Claire refocused on the letter. The words seemed both cryptic and deliberate, urging her to act. Trust the path, it said. But how could she trust something so vague? Her thoughts drifted to the name Evelyn. Could she be a real person? If so, perhaps someone in town knew her. Claire decided to visit the library the next morning, hoping to find records or rumors that might lead her to answers. The next day dawned crisp and clear, the autumn air carrying the scent of falling leaves. Claire walked the familiar streets of Windermere, her mind racing with questions. The town had always felt small and predictable, but now, every face she passed seemed to hide a secret, every building a potential clue. The library, an old stone building with ivy crawling up its walls, stood at the center of town. Inside, the scent of aged paper and ink greeted her like an old friend. Claire approached the librarian, a kindly woman named Mrs. Hargrove, who had known her since childhood. "Good morning, Mrs. Hargrove," Claire began, her voice hesitant. "Morning, dear," the librarian replied, adjusting her glasses. "What brings you in today?" "I'm looking for information about someone named Evelyn. I don't have a last name, but I think she might live near Windermere or have some connection to the area." Mrs. Hargrove frowned thoughtfully. "Evelyn, you say? That's not a name I've heard recently." But she trailed off, tapping her chin. There was an Evelyn who lived on the outskirts of town many years ago. She was a bit of a recluse. People said she knew things about the woods that no one else did. Some even called her a witch, though I suspect that was just gossip. Claire's pulse quickened. Do you know where she lived? Mrs. Hargrove nodded. An old cottage by the eastern edge of the forest. Most people avoid that area now, say it's cursed, though again, it's probably just stories. Do you think the cottage is still there? It might be, Mrs. Hargrove replied, her expression turning cautious. But be careful, Claire. The woods are lovely, but they can be dangerous if you don't know your way. Claire thanked her and left the library, clutching her coat tighter as a cool breeze swept through the town. The eastern edge of the forest was unfamiliar to her, a part she had never dared to explore. Yet, the pull of the letter was undeniable. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Claire found herself standing at the forest's edge once more. The whisper of the trees was louder here, their branches forming a canopy that seemed to hum with energy. She took a deep breath and stepped into the shadows. The path was faint, barely visible beneath a blanket of fallen leaves. Moonlight filtered through the branches, casting eerie patterns on the ground. Claire's footsteps felt louder than they should, each one a reminder of how alone she was. After what felt like hours, she saw it, a small, weathered cottage tucked between the trees. The windows were dark, the roof sagging slightly with age. Wild vines crept up the stone walls, and the faint scent of jasmine lingered in the air. Claire hesitated at the door, her hand hovering over the knocker. Her heart raced, but the letter's words echoed in her mind, "Seek Evelyn." Summoning her courage, she knocked 3 times. The door creaked open almost immediately, as if someone had been waiting for her. An older woman stood in the doorway, her silver hair cascading over her shoulders like moonlight. Her piercing blue eyes studied Claire with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You've come," the woman said, her voice calm but knowing. "Are you Evelyn?" Claire asked, though she already knew the answer. The woman nodded. "I've been expecting you, Claire." Claire's stomach dropped. "How do you know my name?" Evelyn smiled faintly and stepped aside, gesturing for her to enter. "Come in. There's much to discuss, and little time to waste." As Claire crossed the threshold, the faint hum of the forest seemed to grow louder, as though the woods themselves were holding their breath. The answers she sought were close, but with them came the promise of something far greater and far more dangerous than she could have imagined. The inside of Evelyn's cottage was nothing like Claire had expected. Though the exterior had appeared weathered and abandoned, the interior was warm and meticulously kept. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across shelves lined with books, jars of dried herbs, and strange artifacts Claire couldn't identify. The scent of jasmine lingered here too, mingling with the earthy aroma of burning wood. Evelyn motioned for Claire to sit at a small round table near the fire. On it rested a teapot and 2 mismatched cups, as if the woman had known Claire would be coming. "You must have questions," Evelyn said as she poured tea, her movements calm and deliberate. Claire hesitated, unsure where to begin. Her hands found the letter in her coat pocket, and she placed it on the table. "I found this in the woods. It led me to you. What is Moonlit Haven? And why does it feel like this was meant for me?" Evelyn's piercing blue eyes softened. She picked up the letter, her fingers tracing the crescent moon seal as though it were a relic. "Moonlit Haven is a sanctuary," she began. "A place that exists beyond the boundaries of the ordinary world. It's not merely a location, it's a state of being, a place where the weary find peace and the lost find purpose." Claire frowned. "That sounds abstract. How can a place like that exist? And how do I fit into this?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "You fit because you heard the call. Not everyone does. The woods whispered to you, didn't they? Guided you to the oak tree?" Claire nodded reluctantly. "Yes, but I don't understand why. She paused, struggling for the right words. "I'm no one special." "On the contrary," Evelyn said, leaning forward. "It's precisely because you feel ordinary that you were chosen. Moonlit Haven calls to those who carry unseen burdens, those who need it most. But getting there is not a simple matter. The journey is as much within as it is without." Evelyn reached for a book on a nearby shelf and flipped it open to a page filled with illustrations of the woods and a glowing crescent moon. She pointed to a map sketched in fine detail. "The path to Moonlit Haven begins with understanding," she explained. "The woods are alive, Claire. They sense your intentions, your fears, your hopes. To reach the haven, you must navigate not only the physical terrain, but also the shadows within yourself." Claire stared at the map, her mind reeling. "This feels like a lot to take in," she admitted. "Why me? What happens if I fail?" Evelyn's expression turned serious. "The journey isn't about succeeding or failing. It's about facing what you've avoided, about letting the forest and yourself guide you. And you won't be alone. There are allies along the way, though you'll need to decide who to trust." "Trust?" Claire asked, her voice tinged with doubt. Evelyn nodded. "The woods are a reflection of your heart, Claire. They will challenge you, but they will also reveal the strength you don't yet know you possess." Claire sipped the tea, the warmth of it grounding her. "If this is all true, how do I start? What's my next step?" Evelyn stood and walked to a cabinet, pulling out a small wooden box adorned with carvings of leaves and stars. She placed it on the table and opened it, revealing a glowing stone the size of a walnut. Its light was soft and pulsating, like the rhythm of a heartbeat. "This is your guide," Evelyn said. "It's called the Starstone. It will illuminate the path when you feel lost, but only if you trust it. Hold it close and listen to what it tells you. Claire reached out, her fingers brushing the smooth surface of the stone. The glow intensified for a moment, filling her chest with a warmth that bordered on overwhelming. "What if I'm not ready for this?" she whispered, her doubts surfacing. Evelyn placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "No one is ever truly ready, Claire. But the path chose you for a reason. Trust that, if nothing else." As the fire crackled softly and the weight of the starstone settled into her palm, Claire felt the first flicker of determination. The shadows of her past might loom large, but the whisper of the woods and the promise of Moonlit Haven called to her like a beacon. Her journey was just beginning, and though she didn't fully understand what lay ahead, she knew she couldn't turn back now. The night sky stretched endlessly above Claire as she stepped beyond the threshold of Evelyn's cottage, the starstone glowing faintly in her hand. The trees whispered in the cool breeze, their branches forming a canopy of shadows and moonlight. She had left her familiar world behind and now stood on the edge of a journey that felt both thrilling and terrifying. "Remember," Evelyn had said before closing the door behind her, "the starstone will guide you, but it responds to your intentions. Stay true to yourself, no matter what you encounter." Claire turned back briefly, the soft glow of the cottage windows fading into the darkness of the forest. She clutched the starstone tightly, its warmth a small comfort against the chill creeping into the air. Her path was unclear, but the light pulsing in her hand seemed to pulse with reassurance, nudging her forward. As she walked deeper into the woods, the familiar trails gave way to untamed undergrowth. Each step felt heavier, as though the forest itself tested her resolve. The starstone's glow illuminated the way, casting a gentle light on the uneven ground. Suddenly, the trees opened up to reveal a wide clearing bathed in moonlight. The stars above seemed impossibly bright, their light spilling down like silver rain. At the center of the clearing stood a small stone pedestal, its surface etched with intricate carvings. Claire approached cautiously, her footsteps barely audible on the soft grass. On the pedestal lay a feather, impossibly large and iridescent, shimmering with hues of silver and blue. It didn't seem like something from the natural world. As Claire reached out to touch it, the air around her seemed to shift, growing warmer and alive with energy. "You're braver than most," a voice said, low and resonant. Claire spun around, her heart leaping. A figure stepped into the clearing, emerging from the shadows as if the forest itself had shaped them. It was a man, tall and lithe, with dark eyes that seemed to hold galaxies within them. His hair, streaked with silver, glinted in the moonlight. "Who are you?" Claire asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I'm Alaric," he replied, inclining his head slightly. "A guide of sorts. Or a guardian, depending on who you ask. Are you part of Moonlit Haven?" Claire asked. Alaric smiled faintly. "Not exactly. I exist between worlds, much like this forest. But I am here to ensure you understand what lies ahead." He gestured to the feather. "That is your first trial." Claire glanced back at the pedestal. "A feather? What am I supposed to do with it?" "It's more than a feather," Alaric said, his tone almost amused. "It represents a question only you can answer. What do you truly seek on this journey?" Claire hesitated. "I thought I was looking for Moonlit Haven." "Moonlit Haven is a place, yes," Alaric said, his expression turning serious. "But it's also a reflection of your heart. The path will test your intentions, your fears, and your strength. If you cannot answer honestly, the forest will not let you pass." The weight of his words settled heavily on Claire. She reached for the feather again, her fingers brushing its soft surface. As she did, a wave of emotion washed over her, grief for her father, the loneliness that had followed, and the yearning for something she couldn't yet name. "I want peace," she said finally, her voice breaking slightly. "I want to let go of the pain I've been carrying. I want to feel like myself again." The clearing seemed to brighten, the stars above pulsing in time with her words. The feather dissolved into light, its glow rising into the sky like a firefly. Alaric nodded, his expression unreadable. "That's a start. The forest has accepted your answer, for now. But remember, Claire, honesty is only the beginning. The path ahead will challenge more than just your resolve. Trust yourself, and trust the Starstone." Before she could respond, Alaric stepped back into the shadows, his form disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. Claire stood alone beneath the starlit sky, her heart heavy with the weight of his warning. The clearing was silent once more, the pedestal empty. She looked at the starstone in her hand, its glow steady and strong. With a deep breath, she turned back toward the woods. The journey had only just begun, but already she felt changed, her steps carrying her forward with a purpose she couldn't yet define. Above her, the stars shimmered, silent witnesses to her path. Beneath their watchful light, Claire moved forward, the whisper of the woods and the warmth of the starstone guiding her deeper into the unknown. The forest grew denser as Claire ventured further, the trees pressing in on either side like silent sentinels. The starstone's glow flickered faintly now, its light circling against the thick shadows. Claire's footsteps slowed, uncertainty creeping into her chest. Then, she saw it, a familiar silhouette rising in the distance. The ancient oak, its massive trunk gnarled and scarred, stood as a towering monument in the heart of the woods. The same tree where she had found the letter. As she approached, the air seemed to shift, growing heavier with a sense of expectation. The starstone's glow pulsed more brightly, a rhythmic beat that mirrored her own quickening heart. The hollow in the oak's trunk was still there, but now it seemed deeper, darker, as though it held more than just shadows. Claire hesitated before stepping closer. "Come closer, child," a voice whispered, low and resonant. Claire froze, her pulse pounding in her ears. The voice seemed to come from the tree itself, its tone ancient and commanding. "Who's there?" she called out, gripping the starstone tightly. "I am the keeper of this place," the voice replied. "The guardian of secrets that lie within the roots and branches of the forest." The hollow glowed faintly, a soft golden light spilling out like liquid. Claire leaned closer, her curiosity overcoming her fear. Inside, the light shifted, forming the outline of a key. "The journey requires courage, and courage demands truth," the voice continued. "Take the key, and with it, unlock the truths you seek. But beware, the truths may not be what you wish to hear." Claire reached into the hollow, her fingers brushing the cool, golden surface of the key. As she pulled it free, the light faded, and the voice fell silent. The key was unlike anything she had seen before, its design intricate and almost organic, as though it had grown rather than been crafted. Tiny symbols etched into its surface shimmered faintly, their meanings elusive. "What does this unlock?" Claire asked aloud, but the tree gave no answer. The starstone pulsed again, its light drawing her attention to a path she hadn't noticed before. The narrow trail twisted deeper into the woods, its edges lined with glowing mushrooms that cast an eerie luminescence. With the key in one hand and the starstone in the other, Claire followed the trail. The air grew colder, the trees towering overhead like ancient guardians. Whispers floated on the breeze, fragments of words she couldn't quite understand. Eventually, the path ended at another clearing, smaller and more enclosed than the last. At its center stood a weathered stone archway, its surface carved with the same symbols as the key. The archway pulsed faintly, as though alive. Claire stepped closer, the starstone's glow intensifying. The key in her hand seemed to hum softly, its vibrations resonating with the energy of the archway. "Here lies the first gate," the oak's voice echoed in her mind. "To open it is to face what lies hidden in the depths of your heart." Claire hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. What truths awaited her on the other side? Was she truly ready to face them? Her grip on the starstone tightened, its warmth spreading through her fingers. She took a deep breath and slid the key into the archway's lock. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the ground beneath her feet trembled, and the archway erupted with light. Symbols danced across its surface, glowing and shifting like living things. As the light enveloped her, Claire felt a strange pull, as though the forest itself were drawing her in. The world blurred, the sounds of the woods fading into a deep, resonant hum. When the light finally dimmed, Claire found herself standing in a place unlike any she had ever seen. The forest was gone, replaced by an endless expanse of silver mist. Shapes moved in the distance, their forms fluid and indistinct. The starstone pulsed steadily in her hand, its light cutting through the mist. Claire took a tentative step forward, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. The truth awaited her here, somewhere within the swirling silver haze. And with it, the next step on her path to Moonlit Haven. The silver mist clung to Claire like a veil, muffling sound and obscuring her surroundings. The starstone's light flickered, casting a soft glow over the shifting expanse. Every step felt both purposeful and uncertain, as if the ground itself might vanish beneath her feet. "Stay steady," she whispered to herself, the weight of the golden key still lingering in her palm. The mist began to thin, revealing faint outlines ahead. Slowly, a circular platform emerged, its surface carved from smooth, pale stone. At its center stood a pedestal, similar to the one she had seen beneath the starlit sky, but far older. Symbols etched into its surface glowed faintly, their patterns forming an intricate map. As Claire approached, the starstone pulsed in her hand, responding to the energy radiating from the pedestal. The light seemed to flow from the stone into the carvings, igniting the map with a vivid, golden glow. "Your next step lies here." The oak's voice resonated in her mind again, softer this time, as though it, too, were part of the mist. Claire leaned closer, her eyes tracing the lines and symbols on the map. The carvings depicted a path winding through dense forests, crossing rivers and mountains, before spiraling into a luminous clearing. At the center of the map, the crescent moon symbol from the letter glowed brighter than the rest. "Moonlit Haven," Claire murmured, her finger hovering over the crescent. Suddenly, the symbols shifted. The map's lines rearranged themselves, forming a series of interconnected images. Claire saw a forest path lined with glowing trees, a rushing river crossed by a rickety bridge, and a mountain peak shrouded in clouds. At the center of it all, the crescent moon shimmered like a beacon. But alongside the images were warnings, creatures lurking in the shadows, traps hidden beneath the earth, and other dangers she couldn't yet name. "The journey will test you," a new voice said, breaking the silence. Claire spun around, startled. Standing at the edge of the platform was a woman dressed in flowing robes of deep green, her auburn hair cascading over her shoulders like a waterfall. Her presence radiated authority, but her eyes were kind. "Who are you?" Claire asked, instinctively gripping the starstone. "My name is Alira," the woman said, stepping closer. "I am a guide, though my role differs from Alaric's. Where he guards the boundaries, I illuminate the way." Claire studied her warily. "Why am I being guided? Can't I find Moonlit Haven on my own?" Alira smiled faintly. "The path is not just about reaching a destination. It's about transformation. Guides help travelers face what they might avoid, ensuring they do not lose their way." Claire looked back at the glowing map. "What's waiting for me at Moonlit Haven? Why is it so important?" "That is something only you can discover," Alira replied. "But first, you must follow the map. Each step will bring you closer to the haven, and to understanding why you were called." Alira waved her hand, and a small, glowing scroll appeared, floating in midair. It unfurled itself, revealing a miniature version of the map etched into its surface. "This will lead you," she said, taking the scroll and handing it to Claire. "The Starstone will guide you through the dangers, but the map will show you where to go." Claire accepted the scroll, its warmth spreading through her fingertips. "What if I fail?" she asked quietly. Elvira's expression softened. "Failure is part of the journey. What matters is how you rise after falling. Trust in yourself and trust the Starstone. It will never abandon you." The mist around them began to dissipate, the edges of the platform blurring into the familiar outlines of the forest. Elvira's figure faded with it, her voice lingering like an echo. "Remember, Claire, the map shows the way, but your heart must carry you forward." When the mist finally cleared, Claire stood once again beneath the towering trees. The forest was silent, its whispers replaced by the distant sound of running water. The scroll in her hand shimmered, its map glowing faintly. The Starstone pulsed in rhythm, its light pointing toward the trail ahead. With a deep breath, Claire unfolded the map and took her first step onto the path it revealed. The promise of Moonlit Haven glimmered in the distance, but the forest still held its secrets and its trials. The journey was far from over, and Claire knew she had only begun to uncover the truths waiting in the heart of the woods. The forest felt alive as Claire ventured deeper, following the map's glowing guidance. The trees seemed to shift when she wasn't looking, their branches twisting like outstretched fingers. The Starstone pulsed steadily in her hand, its light casting a soft halo around her path. The air carried a faint melody, a song of wind rustling through leaves, accompanied by distant, bell-like chimes. It was haunting and beautiful, but Claire couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Her first challenge came sooner than she expected. The path led her to a massive tree whose roots stretched out like a natural gate, blocking her way forward. Symbols glowed faintly on the bark, mirroring those on the map. As Claire approached, the Starstone flickered in her hand, its light growing dim. "What now?" she muttered, unfolding the map for guidance. The scroll revealed an inscription near the glowing tree symbol: "To pass, offer truth; to remain, embrace fear." Claire frowned, the words sinking in. "Offer truth? What does that mean?" The tree's roots shifted slightly, creating a hollow that seemed to invite her to step forward. As she did, the forest around her blurred and darkened. When the world stilled again, she was no longer standing in front of the tree. Instead, she found herself in her childhood bedroom. The space was eerily familiar, down to the worn teddy bear perched on the bed. Claire's breath caught in her throat. This room had always been a refuge, but now it felt suffocating. Shadows danced along the walls, and a faint voice called out from nowhere and everywhere at once. "You left me," the voice accused. It was her father's voice, soft but heavy with hurt. Claire spun around. "This isn't real," she said aloud, her voice trembling. "It can't be." The shadows coalesced into a figure, a blurry, indistinct form of her father, standing in the doorway. His face was obscured, but she could feel the weight of his gaze. "Why did you leave?" the figure asked again. Tears pricked her eyes. "I didn't want to leave," she whispered. "You were gone. I couldn't stay and face the memories alone." The figure stepped closer. "And now? Are you still running?" Claire's grip on the starstone tightened. Its light flickered weakly, but it was still there. She forced herself to meet the figure's gaze, though it was hard to see through the tears. "I don't know how to stop running," she admitted. "I don't know how to let go of the guilt. I feel like I should have done more, even though I know I couldn't have changed anything." The room fell silent. The figure of her father dissolved into the shadows, and the walls of the bedroom melted away. She was back in front of the tree, the roots parting to reveal the path ahead. The starstone's light surged, its warmth steadying her. Claire wiped her eyes and took a deep breath, stepping through the gateway formed by the roots. The forest on the other side was different, brighter, almost ethereal. The trees glowed faintly, their leaves shimmering with iridescent hues. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and something sweeter, a fragrance that soothed her nerves. The trail wound past pools of water that reflected the stars, though no sky was visible above. Strange creatures flitted through the branches, tiny, luminous beings that looked like a cross between dragonflies and butterflies. One of them darted toward Claire, hovering inches from her face. Its wings emitted a soft, musical hum, and its tiny eyes gleamed with curiosity. "Hello," Claire said, her voice soft. The creature tilted its head before darting away, joining a cluster of others that formed a shimmering trail of light. They seemed to beckon her forward. The enchanted forest was not without its dangers. As Claire followed the glowing creatures, she noticed the shadows growing deeper in the corners of her vision. The starstone's light flared briefly, and she caught a glimpse of movement, a pair of glowing eyes peering at her from the underbrush. She froze, her heart pounding. The eyes didn't blink. Instead, they crept closer, accompanied by the sound of leaves crunching. Claire raised the starstone instinctively. Its light blazed, illuminating the figure of a sleek, black wolf with fur that shimmered like oil under moonlight. The wolf growled softly, its posture low and wary. "Easy," Claire whispered, trying to keep her voice calm. The wolf circled her slowly, its eyes locked on hers. The starstone's light seemed to soothe it, and the growling stopped. Finally, the wolf sat back on its haunches, tilting its head as if studying her. "You're not going to attack me, are you?" Claire asked nervously. The wolf huffed, almost as if offended. It stood again and walked a few paces down the path before pausing to look back at her. "You want me to follow?" The wolf didn't respond, but its posture suggested agreement. With a mixture of caution and curiosity, Claire followed the wolf deeper into the forest. It led her to a clearing where a tree unlike any she'd seen before towered over the rest. Its bark shimmered like silver, and its leaves glowed faintly, each one shaped like a crescent moon. At the base of the tree, an intricate carving of a crescent moon pulsed with light, matching the rhythm of the starstone. The wolf sat at the edge of the clearing, watching silently as Claire approached the tree. The starstone grew warm in her hand, and she felt a pull toward the glowing carving. She reached out, her fingers brushing the surface of the crescent moon. A wave of energy coursed through her, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. The map in her hand shifted again, revealing a new section. The crescent moon at its center now burned brightly, marking her progress. Almost there, Claire whispered, determination rising within her. The wolf stood and held softly, the sound carrying through the enchanted forest. Claire smiled faintly, feeling a surge of gratitude. Her journey was far from over, but for the first time, she felt a glimmer of confidence. Whatever lay ahead, she would face it, step by step, truth by truth, guided by the starstone and the light within herself. The silver-barked tree loomed behind Claire as she left the clearing, the wolf's watchful gaze still lingering in her mind. The starstone pulsed softly, lighting her way as she ventured deeper into the enchanted forest. She could feel the air growing heavier, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. The path grew narrower, flanked by thick, ancient trees whose branches intertwined to form a natural archway. The light dimmed, and the forest seemed to shift around her, each step drawing her into a place where time felt slower, more deliberate. Finally, the path ended at a cavernous opening in the earth. The entrance was framed by jagged rocks, covered in glowing moss, and a faint golden light emanated from within. The map shimmered in her hand, its glowing symbols rearranging once more. At the center of the map, a small inscription appeared, "Enter and speak what lies hidden." Claire hesitated, her heart pounding. Speak what lies hidden. Another test? The wolf had vanished, leaving her alone at the entrance. Summoning her courage, Claire stepped into the cavern. Inside, the space was vast yet intimate, the walls glimmering as though embedded with tiny stars. At the center of the chamber stood a figure cloaked in shadows, its form indistinct but undeniably humanoid. "Claire," the figure said, its voice echoing as if it came from everywhere and nowhere. "How do you know my name?" she asked, gripping the starstone tightly. "I am the keeper of secrets," the figure replied. "I have watched over this place for countless ages. Those who seek Moonlit Haven must first face the truths they carry within them. You have come far, but your journey is only beginning." Claire took a step closer. "What do you mean?" "I've already faced truths. I've seen memories I tried to forget." "Truths are not just memories," the keeper said, its tone steady but firm. "They are the pieces of you that you hide, even from yourself. To move forward, you must offer one such truth here, where it will be kept safe." Claire's chest tightened. "Offer a truth? Like a secret? Yes, the keeper replied. The starstone cannot fully guide you unless you unburden your heart. Speak your truth, and the path to Moonlit Haven will reveal itself further. Claire's mind raced. She thought of all the moments in her life that she had buried, the pain of losing her father, the guilt of leaving her hometown, the fear of not being enough. Which truth would unlock the path forward? Her voice trembled as she began. When my father died, I told myself I had to be strong for my mother. But the truth is, she paused, her throat tightening. The keeper waited silently, its presence patient and unwavering. The truth is, I felt relief, Claire admitted, tears spilling down her cheeks. Relief that I didn't have to watch him suffer anymore. But I hated myself for feeling that way. I still do. The cavern grew still, the air thick with the weight of her confession. The starstone's light dimmed, then flared brighter than ever, casting golden rays across the chamber. You carry guilt for a kindness of the heart, the keeper said gently. Relief at the end of suffering is not cruelty, but compassion. You must learn to forgive yourself. Claire wiped her eyes, her breath shaky. I don't know if I can. You can, the keeper replied. And you will, in time. For now, you have taken the first step. The cavern shifted around her, the glimmering walls fading to reveal a new path. The starstone's light guided her forward, and as she turned to leave, the keeper's voice echoed one last time. Remember, Claire, the secrets you guard do not define you. What matters is the courage to face them. She emerged from the cavern into a forest transformed. The trees were taller, their leaves shimmering like liquid silver. The air was clearer, filled with a sense of renewal. The map glowed in her hand, showing the next stage of her journey, a winding river that cut through the heart of the forest, its waters glowing faintly under a crescent moon etched into the sky. Claire felt a sense of clarity, even as the path ahead remained uncertain. The keeper's words echoed in her mind, a reminder that her journey was as much inward as it was outward. The way to Moonlit Haven was still long, but with each step, she was beginning to understand not only the path, but herself. The air grew cooler as Claire walked through the transformed forest, the silver trees whispering softly in the breeze. The path ahead was more defined now, leading her toward a river that shimmered under the light of the crescent moon. The sound of water flowing gently echoed through the trees, soothing yet mysterious. The starstone pulsed steadily in her hand, its glow now warm and reassuring. As she approached the riverbank, she saw that the water was not like any river she had encountered before. Its surface was perfectly still, reflecting not only the moonlight above, but also strange, shifting images, faces, places, and events she thought she had long forgotten. The river of memories, a voice whispered from behind her. Claire turned quickly, but no one was in sight. She felt the presence of something ancient, something wise. The air around her was thick with the weight of untold stories, each ripple in the water carrying echoes of the past. The map in her hand shimmered, showing a glowing line that led across the river to the other side. "You must cross," the voice continued. "But know this, the river does not only show the past. It shows what you carry within you, the things you have buried, the memories you have locked away. To cross, you must confront them." Claire felt a chill crawl down her spine. "I don't know if I'm ready," she whispered. The surface of the river began to ripple, and Claire instinctively stepped back. The moon above brightened, casting a silvery light on the water, and within it, the images began to shift more clearly. First, it was a younger version of herself, standing in the kitchen of her childhood home, her mother's voice calling out to her from the other room. The scene shifted again, and Claire saw herself as a teenager, sitting at her father's bedside in the hospital, her face filled with sorrow as he struggled to breathe. Then, another memory emerged, this one from a moment she had long since tried to forget. She was standing on the edge of a cliff, her heart racing, the wind whipping through her hair. The memory was brief, but it was enough to make her breath catch in her throat. The image began to fade, and a new one took its place. This time, it was a more recent memory, the night she left her small town, the decision to leave behind everything she had ever known, the fear of the unknown weighing heavy in her chest. "You can't leave yet," the voice murmured again, this time softer, gentler. "Not until you face what you have hidden from yourself." Claire took a hesitant step toward the river's edge, her gaze fixed on the faces and moments that flashed before her. She recognized the pattern of avoidance, the way she had tried to run from the pain, from the grief, from the guilt. She had buried these memories deep, too afraid to confront them, to truly understand them. Her eyes fell on the image of her father, the last time she saw him before he passed. He had looked so frail, so fragile, yet he had smiled at her with such warmth and love. "I'm proud of you, Claire," he had said, his voice weak but steady. The memory tugged at her heart, the knot of guilt tightening. "I didn't do enough," she whispered. "I wasn't there when you needed me most." The water shimmered in response, and a ripple spread across the surface, distorting the images. The moon above seemed to pulse, its light intensifying. Claire took a deep breath and stepped closer to the river, her reflection staring back at her from the water's surface. "This is the moment," she told herself. "I can't run anymore. I have to face it." She reached out and placed her hand on the water, the coolness of the river's surface sending a jolt through her. The river began to swirl, its waters twisting into the shape of a bridge, glowing faintly with the same light as the starstone. The images in the water faded, and for the first time, Claire felt a sense of peace. The voice, now clearer and stronger, spoke once more. "The river does not judge. It only reflects. The memories you carry are part of you, but they do not define you. What matters is how you move forward." With a final glance at the river, Claire stepped onto the glowing bridge. As she crossed, the water flowed beneath her feet, the river of memories whispering softly, as if releasing her from the weight of the past. The map in her hand fluttered, revealing a new path, one that wound upward, toward the next challenge in her journey. Claire took a steadying breath, the weight in her chest easing. She had confronted her past, acknowledged the pain and the guilt, and now she felt lighter, more certain of the path ahead. The river, still and calm, reflected the moon as Claire continued her journey. Each step forward brought her closer to Moonlit Haven, and closer to understanding the truths she had hidden for so long. The road ahead was long, but Claire knew she was no longer alone. She had faced the river of memories, and with it, she had learned that to move forward, she had to embrace both the light and the shadows within herself. The bridge shimmered beneath Claire's feet as she crossed the river of memories, each step resonating with a gentle hum. The waters below seemed to ripple in acknowledgement of her passage, the glimmering images fading into the deep as if to give her space to move forward. As she reached the far side, the river's surface stilled, leaving behind a tranquil silence. The path ahead twisted upward into the dense forest, the moonlight filtering through the canopy above, casting a silvery glow across the way. The starstone in her hand pulsed warmly, its steady rhythm grounding her in the stillness. With a deep breath, Claire looked ahead. The path was narrowing, the trees towering higher, their ancient trunks twisting as though reaching for something beyond the stars. She felt an eerie sense of anticipation in the air, a subtle pull towards something she couldn't yet see. Suddenly, a soft wind stirred the leaves, and a low voice, like a whisper from another realm, drifted through the air. "You've crossed the river. Now, the bridge between realms awaits." Claire paused, looking around, but saw no one. The voice seemed to echo from the very heart of the forest, a faint tremor in the air itself. "Who's there?" she called, her voice firm but betraying a hint of uncertainty. "You are ready, Claire," the voice replied. "The boundary between your world and this realm is thin now. The bridge that you seek is not of stone or wood, but of the heart." With a sudden understanding, Claire glanced down at the starstone in her palm. Its light was steady, but seemed to be responding to the words, glowing brighter with each passing second. The pulse of energy from the stone aligned with her own heartbeat, the rhythm of the two becoming one. "This is the bridge," she whispered, a spark of realization flashing through her. The trees around her began to shift, the shadows lengthening, and the ground beneath her feet seemed to tremble. A mist swirled around the path ahead, rising like smoke from the earth, obscuring her vision. But then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the mist parted, revealing a scene so unfamiliar yet strangely comforting. Before her stood a massive, ethereal gateway, woven from light itself. It hummed with energy, like a tuning fork vibrating at the edge of her consciousness. The gate was not made of metal or wood, but rather threads of shimmering energy, glowing in hues of silver, gold, and pale blue. The path to this gate had been hidden from her eyes until now, and she felt drawn to it, her heart quickening. "You've come far, Claire," the voice spoke again, this time clearer. as if it were speaking directly from the gate itself. But to cross this bridge, you must face the truth of your own soul. Here, in this place between realms, you will find the answers to the questions you have long hidden from yourself. Claire hesitated. The gate before her was no ordinary portal. It was the very manifestation of the unknown, the threshold between what she had known and what she had yet to understand. She stepped closer, and as her footfall met the ground, the gate seemed to respond, vibrating softly in acknowledgement. "I've already faced so much," she murmured, her mind replaying the river, the memories she had confronted. "What more is there for me to learn?" The heart holds its secrets even after the mind has accepted its truths, the voice said softly. "Step through, and you will know." Claire reached out, her fingers brushing the threads of light. As soon as she made contact, a wave of energy surged through her, flooding her senses. She closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the intensity of it. Suddenly, she was no longer standing in the forest. The world around her shifted, melting away like mist, and she found herself in a new place, a space that felt timeless, as if it existed outside of the boundaries of reality. It was a vast, open expanse, endless and breathtaking, with no clear horizon. The ground beneath her was soft, like sand, but smoother, as if it was made of stardust. Above her, the sky was a shifting tapestry of colors, blues, purples, and golds, where constellations moved like living creatures, swirling around one another in a slow, celestial dance. At the center of this place stood an ancient figure, tall and cloaked in shimmering robes of light. The figure was ageless, neither young nor old, with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of the universe. A calm presence radiated from them, and Claire felt an immediate sense of peace, even though the very nature of this place was beyond her understanding. "This is the bridge between realms," the figure spoke, its voice like a soft echo that seemed to resonate in every corner of her being. "Here, the truth of your soul is revealed." Claire took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. "Who are you?" "I am the keeper of the threshold," the figure replied. "I stand between what you know and what you seek to understand. You have crossed the river of memories, but now you must cross the bridge of possibility. You stand at the boundary of your own potential." The figure's words sank in, heavy and profound. Claire's mind raced as she realized what it meant. This was the moment of choice, the moment she would have to decide what she truly wanted from this journey. "What must I do?" she asked, her voice small yet resolute. The keeper of the threshold extended a hand toward her, palm open, inviting. "Place your heart within your hands, Claire. See what you hold, and choose what you will carry into the next realm." Claire stood still for a moment, contemplating the enormity of what was being asked of her. She had already faced the pain of her past, the guilt that clung to her. She had crossed the river and confronted memories she had buried deep within. But now, standing before this gate, this bridge between realms, she realized that the final step was not just about confronting her past, but about choosing who she would become. With trembling hands, she placed one hand over her heart and closed her eyes. She felt the pulse of the starstone in her palm, resonating with the beat of her heart. The energy within her surged, and she felt her fears, her doubts, and her desires all swirling together, mixing into something new. "I choose to let go of the past," Claire whispered. "I choose to embrace the unknown and trust that I am ready for what lies ahead." The keeper nodded, a slight smile curving beneath its hood. "Then you are ready, Claire. Step through the bridge, and know that you carry all that you are into the next realm." With one last glance at the keeper, Claire stepped forward. As she crossed the threshold, the light surrounding the gate enveloped her, and the stars above swirled in a brilliant display. She was no longer just herself, but a part of the greater whole, a thread woven into the fabric of a universe much larger than she had ever imagined. The bridge between realms had become the bridge to her own transformation. And as she passed through, she knew that the journey was only just beginning. The light from the bridge slowly faded, and Claire found herself standing in a new, serene world. The air was warmer here, carrying a faint scent of jasmine and wood smoke. Above her, the sky had shifted into a deep, twilight blue, scattered with stars that seemed closer, more tangible, as if she could reach up and touch them. The ground beneath her feet was soft, like a path made of crushed petals, winding gently through a forest of ancient, towering trees whose branches spread out like delicate lace. Ahead, faint lights flickered like fireflies, floating lazily through the air, casting a warm glow that filled the space with a sense of tranquility. Claire's heart quickened with curiosity. She followed the lights, drawn toward their soft, inviting glow. As she ventured deeper into this peaceful realm, the lights grew brighter, revealing the source. It was a bustling clearing, a vast open space surrounded by trees whose trunks were wrapped in glowing vines. The clearing was alive with movement, and in the center of it all was an astonishing sight, an enormous, vibrant lantern festival in full swing. Rows of lanterns, each glowing with different colors, reds, blues, golds, and greens, hung from tall wooden posts, swaying gently in the breeze. They flickered like tiny stars, casting beautiful patterns across the ground. The air was filled with the sounds of laughter, music, and the quiet murmur of voices. There were people, figures who seemed to exist both within and beyond the realm of reality, their features ethereal, yet familiar. Some were walking through the crowd, while others danced in the soft light, their movements fluid and graceful. Claire stood still, watching in awe as the scene unfolded around her. It was as if she had stepped into a dream, a moment suspended in time where joy and serenity coexisted without effort. The festival felt ancient yet timeless, a celebration of something deeper than any event she had ever experienced. The colors, the lights, the sounds, they all blended into a single, harmonious rhythm that resonated within her very soul. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts, and she turned to find a figure approaching her. The person was tall, cloaked in a deep indigo robe that shimmered with patterns of stars, and their face was obscured by a delicate mask of gold and silver. They moved gracefully, like a shadow passing through the light. "You've arrived," the figure said, their voice gentle yet commanding, as if they had known her for ages. "The Lantern Festival is a place of reflection and celebration. Here, you will find what you seek, though it may not be as you expect." Claire took a cautious step forward, her curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" she asked. "The lanterns you see," the figure began, "are not just for light. They are vessels of memory, of dreams, and of hope. Each one represents a piece of the journey, both the light and the dark, the past and the future. Those who attend the festival bring their own lanterns, carrying them into the world and leaving them here as a way to honor their path." Claire's gaze swept over the scene again, her eyes catching on a figure in the distance, a woman standing in front of a large, glowing lantern shaped like a tree. The woman's face was serene, her eyes closed as she held her lantern with both hands, as if in quiet prayer. Around her, other figures stood in silent reverence, holding their lanterns aloft. "Who are they?" Claire asked, her voice barely a whisper. "They are the keepers of the festival," the figure explained. "They are the ones who have walked this path before you, and they now serve as guardians of the light. Each of them carries a lantern that represents a turning point in their journey, an event, a choice, or a lesson they have learned. The lanterns shine brightly in the realm of memory, and their light guides those who come after." Claire felt a pull within her, an irresistible urge to step closer to the central gathering. She moved toward the circle of figures, her feet light as if the ground itself was lifting her forward. The air hummed with energy, and the closer she got, the clearer the voices of the dancers and the music became, a delicate melody that seemed to sing to her very soul. As she approached the gathering, she noticed something different about herself. The starstone in her hand pulsed more brightly than ever before, and as her fingers brushed against it, the stone seemed to respond to the music, sending ripples of energy through her body. It was as though the stone had become a part of the rhythm of this place, a key that unlocked something deep within her. Without realizing it, she had found herself standing before a tall, illuminated lantern, its surface adorned with intricate symbols and swirling patterns. The lantern's light shimmered in colors that matched the stars in the sky. It was calling to her, and without thinking, Claire reached out to touch it. The moment her fingers made contact with the lantern, a flash of light burst from the lantern's core, enveloping her in a warm, golden glow. The world around her seemed to blur and dissolve, leaving only the brilliant light that surrounded her. Images flashed before her eyes, memories, emotions, and visions of what could be. She saw her father's face again, but this time, he smiled at her with pride, not sorrow. She saw her mother, young and vibrant, laughing beside her in a field of wildflowers. Then, the scene shifted, and she saw herself standing at the edge of a cliff, but this time, her heart was not heavy with guilt. Instead, there was a sense of freedom, of peace. She saw the face of the keeper of the threshold, nodding at her with approval. She saw the faces of others, figures she did not recognize, but somehow understood. Each one was holding their own lantern, each one had a path, and each one had reached this place. The lantern flickered, and Claire suddenly understood. This lantern, the voice of the masked figure said, now beside her once again, is yours to carry. It holds not just the weight of your memories, but the possibility of your future. The light within you, within all of us, is not bound by time. It is an ever-burning flame that continues to guide us, even when we cannot see it. Claire nodded slowly, the weight of the moment settling into her chest. I'm ready, she whispered, feeling the truth of her words vibrate through her. The lantern in her hands felt warm, alive with light, and she could sense its power, the power of memory, of hope, and of healing. She had crossed the river of memories, stepped through the bridge between realms, and now, standing in the heart of the Lantern Festival, she knew that she was not just a traveler of realms, but a keeper of her own light. The festival swirled around her, a dance of stars and memories, and Claire knew that her journey was not over. It was only just beginning. The Lantern Festival was alive with warmth, its gentle glow flickering across the faces of those gathered in the clearing. But as Claire stood there, holding the lantern of her memories and hopes, a subtle shift in the atmosphere caught her attention. The once gentle breeze had turned colder, and the lights of the lanterns, though still radiant, now seemed to cast longer shadows than before, stretching across the ground like tendrils reaching out from the darkness. The music that had filled the air so melodiously now carried a faint, eerie undertone, a note of tension that hummed beneath the melody. The figures dancing in the circle moved more slowly now, their graceful steps seeming almost mechanical, as if their rhythm was being interrupted by some unseen force. Claire's heart skipped a beat. The serenity of the festival seemed to fray at the edges, and something dark, was beginning to creep into this peaceful world. Her fingers tightened around the lantern, the warmth of the light comforting yet somehow lessened by the deepening shadows. She turned to the figure who had greeted her earlier, the one cloaked in indigo robes and the mask of gold and silver. Their presence had been so calming, yet now, even they seemed uneasy. The figure's eyes, though still hidden beneath the mask, carried an unmistakable weight of concern. The shadows are stirring, the figure said softly, almost to themselves. It's a sign, Claire. A warning. Claire's voice barely rose above a whisper. What do you mean? I thought this place was a sanctuary. It was. And it still is, in many ways, the figure replied, their tone somber. But every realm has its balance, and light cannot exist without shadow. The shadows are a part of this world, hidden in the corners of every heart, every place, every journey. But sometimes they rise, they gather strength. Claire felt a shiver run down her spine, and she looked around, her senses alert. The festival, once a celebration of light, now felt as if it were teetering on the brink of something darker, something she wasn't prepared to face. Without warning, a cold gust of wind swept through the clearing, extinguishing a dozen lanterns in a single breath. The vibrant lights flickered violently, and then, in a cascade, the night seemed to swallow them whole, leaving only the eerie glow of the remaining lanterns in their wake. The music faltered, its soft notes now twisted into a discordant hum, and the figures in the circle stopped dancing. The ground trembled, and from the shadows of the trees, figures began to emerge. They were tall and formless, their outlines shifting like smoke in the wind, their bodies wrapped in the deepening darkness that seemed to swallow up the light. Their presence was suffocating, oppressive, like a shadow that grew with every passing second. Claire's heart pounded in her chest, and instinctively, she raised the lantern in front of her, the light casting a soft but steady glow around her. It seemed to pulse with a life of its own, but the shadows, relentless and hungry, pressed in from all sides. The masked figures stepped closer to Claire, their voice now serious, urgent. "These are the shadowed ones. They are born from the fears and regrets of the world, the unresolved darkness that lies dormant in every heart. They are the embodiment of doubt, of the things you push aside and try to forget." Claire's grip tightened around the lantern, and she took a slow step back, her breath shallow. "How do I stop them? What do they want?" "They want to extinguish the light," the figure replied grimly. "They seek to return this world to the dark, to turn the hearts of those who carry the light against themselves. If they are allowed to grow, they will consume everything. But the lantern, it is your protection. As long as you carry it, the shadows cannot completely overwhelm you." "Not yet." Claire's mind raced. She remembered the words of the keeper of the threshold: "The light within you, within all of us, is not bound by time." This lantern, this light, was not just for show. It was her strength, her connection to this world and to herself. She had faced the river, the bridge, and the memories. This was the true test. But the shadows were growing stronger. The figures around her seemed to multiply, their faces becoming clearer now, hollow eyes staring at her with silent menace. Their movements were unnaturally slow, their limbs stretching and bending in ways that defied human nature. They did not speak. Their very presence was enough to instill a creeping dread in her heart. She raised the lantern higher, focusing on its light, willing it to shine brighter. She closed her eyes for a moment, remembering the warmth of the light she had carried with her from the beginning, the flickering warmth of hope, of love, of memories not forgotten. Suddenly, the wind held, and Claire felt a strange pull. She opened her eyes to see the shadows reacting, retreating slightly from the light of the lantern. The light from the lantern, no longer a simple glow, was now vibrant, like a beacon in the night. It pulsed, almost rhythmically, as if responding to her thoughts, to her strength. "Remember who you are," the masked figure said softly, their voice barely audible above the rising wind. "The light within you has always been there. Let it guide you." Claire took a steadying breath, feeling the pulse of the lantern match the rhythm of her own heart. She stepped forward, the shadows recoiling at the intensity of the light. But they did not give up easily. Slowly, they began to circle her, testing her resolve. Each movement was deliberate, calculated, and every flicker of the lantern seemed to cause them to falter. "Don't let them touch you," the figure warned. "They will feed on your doubts, your fears. If you let them in, they will take everything." Claire's resolve hardened. She raised the lantern higher, its light now so bright it cast long beams across the clearing. The shadows hissed, recoiling from the intensity, but they continued to encircle her, growing in strength with each passing second. With a sharp breath, Claire closed her eyes once again. She thought of everything she had faced, her memories, her past, her journey. The light of the lantern was not just a physical object. It was her spirit, her essence, the strength she had gathered through each step. It was her. She was the light. Opening her eyes, Claire stepped forward again, her voice ringing out with clarity and power. "I will not let you win," she declared, the words echoing through the clearing. The shadows shrieked, a sound that seemed to tear at the fabric of reality itself, and for the first time, they faltered. The lantern's light exploded outward in a burst of pure brilliance, flooding the clearing with a radiance that turned the darkness to dust. The shadowed ones recoiled, their forms disintegrating into nothingness, until only the flickering light of the lantern remained. Claire stood, breathing heavily, the lantern still glowing softly in her hands. The festival had returned to its peaceful rhythm, the shadows vanquished, at least for now. The figures, once frozen in the darkness, had resumed their dance, the music lifting into the night once more. But Claire knew that this was only one battle won. There would be more shadows to face, more darkness to confront. But she was ready. The light within her, the light she carried, was stronger than any shadow. And with the lantern in her hands, she would continue her journey, one step at a time. The night had passed, but the dawn was just beginning. The light of the lantern festival gradually softened, the flickering lanterns once again casting long, peaceful shadows across the forest clearing. The warm hum of music filled the air, but this time it was different, subtle, almost melancholic, like the faint echo of a memory long lost. Claire stood alone in the center of the clearing, her lantern held steady before her, a quiet beacon against the stillness that had returned. The air around her felt heavier now, as if the very atmosphere was thick with the remnants of the shadows that had just been driven away. Her heart, still racing from the battle, began to slow. She had faced the darkness and won, but there was a lingering unease, something unsettled that she couldn't quite place. She had learned that this world was alive with the past, with memories, and that everything, every step, every figure, every moment, had meaning. The shadows she had faced were not just physical, they were fragments of forgotten things, lost feelings, and unspoken regrets. Now, as the festival's light returned, she could feel something else lingering in the air. Just beneath the surface, a forgotten note, a melody that once played but had long since faded into silence. As Claire stood there, the wind shifted again, gentle but insistent. It carried with it a soft sound, barely audible at first, like a distant lullaby, woven with sorrow and longing. It tugged at her heartstrings, familiar yet elusive, and she turned toward the source of the sound. Across the clearing, beneath an ancient oak tree, a figure stood. This time, there was no mistaking it. The figure was not like the others. Where the keepers of the festival had been cloaked in light, this one was shrouded in shadow, not dark enough to be a threat, but enough to make Claire uneasy. The figure's form seemed to flicker in and out of focus, as if they were not fully present in this world. And it was this figure, standing beneath the oak tree, that was the source of the haunting melody. The figure was tall, their features obscured by a flowing cloak of deep violet, embroidered with silver threads that shimmered like moonlight. Their head was slightly bowed, as if in deep concentration, and the melody Claire had heard before now seemed to rise from their presence, like a forgotten song drifting through time. Claire's instinct was to move closer, to understand, to seek the source of the music that stirred something deep within her, something she couldn't explain. The light of her lantern flickered, but it remained steady, casting a soft glow that cut through the shadows around her. As she walked toward the figure, the melody became clearer, more distinct, and something about it resonated with her, as if this song was a part of her own forgotten past. She reached the oak tree, her breath caught in her throat, and the figure finally turned to face her. Their eyes, though hidden beneath the cloak, gleamed with an otherworldly light, almost as if they could see into her very soul. "You've heard it, haven't you?" The figure's voice was soft, gentle, and carried the same melancholic weight as the music. The forgotten melody. It is a song from the deep places of the world, a tune played on the strings of memory, lost to time and space. Few can hear it, and fewer still can understand it. Claire nodded, her heart aching with a strange familiarity. "I hear it. It feels like something I've known, but I can't remember. Where does it come from?" The figure smiled, a slow and knowing curve of their lips. "The melody is not born in the world of sight or sound. It exists in the space between worlds, where memory and dreams collide. It is the song of the past that was never meant to be forgotten, the song of the heart that once beat strong but has since faded. It is the echo of a life once lived, a path never taken, a promise broken or fulfilled. It is a song of loss." Claire's chest tightened. She had heard the melody before, in fragments, in dreams, but it was never fully clear until now. The music wove through her like an old memory she had long forgotten, but now it felt like it was calling her home. The sadness it carried, the weight of it, felt like it belonged to her, like it had always been hers. "Why does it sound so familiar?" Claire asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. The figure stepped forward, the shadows around them flickering as though they were alive. "Because it is. The forgotten melody is tied to the essence of every soul who has ever walked the path of light and shadow. It is the symphony of life itself, and you, Claire, are a part of that song." Claire's eyes widened as the truth settled into her heart. This song, this melody, it's not just from the past. It is from all paths, from every decision, every crossroads, every life. The realization was overwhelming, and yet, in some way, it made perfect sense. The lantern in her hands pulsed with a new rhythm, as if responding to the melody that now filled the air. The music, soft and haunting, seemed to weave through her very being, wrapping her in a cocoon of light and shadow. The forgotten melody is not just a song, the figure continued, their voice now barely audible above the sound of the wind. It is the reminder of who we are. It is the call to return to the light, the invitation to remember the things we have forgotten. Some never hear it, some refuse to listen. But you, Claire, you are ready. Ready for what? Claire asked, her throat tight with emotion. To remember, the figure said simply. To remember who you were, who you are, and who you are meant to be. The melody is the key, the door to the past that has been closed for so long. If you listen closely, you will hear it lead you home. The wind picked up, and the shadows around them began to shift, as if the entire world was holding its breath. The figure took a step back, bowing their head as the melody grew louder, filling the air with a powerful, beautiful harmony that resonated deep within Claire's chest. She closed her eyes, allowing the music to wash over her, to unravel the layers of herself she had hidden away for so long. Images flickered before her mind's eye, faint and fleeting, but unmistakable. She saw a figure from her past, a person whose face she couldn't quite remember, but whose presence filled her with a deep sense of longing. She saw her own hands, small and delicate, reaching for something just out of her grasp. She saw a door, half open, revealing a light so pure it seemed to stretch out forever. The forgotten melody swirled around her, calling her forward, urging her to remember what had been lost. Slowly, Claire stepped toward the oak tree, the lantern in her hands now glowing with an intensity she had never felt before. She understood, now, that the melody was not just a song to be heard, it was a part of her, a thread that wove through all the paths she had walked, all the memories she had lived. The figure before her nodded, as if approving. The melody has called you. You are ready to follow its lead. And as the last notes of the forgotten melody echoed through the night, Claire knew that this was only the beginning of the journey back to herself, back to the truth that had been waiting for her all along. The melody lingered in Claire's heart, soft and persistent, like the whisper of an old friend whose voice never quite fades from memory. As the last echoes of the forgotten melody faded into the night, the figure beneath the oak tree stepped back, fading into the shadow from which they had emerged. The moonlight shifted, casting an ethereal glow across the clearing, and the wind settled into a peaceful silence. But even in the stillness, something had changed. Claire could feel it in her bones, an understanding, a calling, deep within her spirit. The forgotten melody had opened something inside her, a door she hadn't known existed, leading her forward on a path she wasn't sure she was ready to walk. The figure's final words still echoed in her mind, "You are ready to follow its lead." The melody had called her, and now she knew she must follow, no matter where it would take her. Claire turned away from the oak tree, the lantern's soft glow now a steady companion in the deepening night. She felt a quiet pull in the distance, a sensation that whispered of something waiting for her, something beyond the clearing, something that could not be ignored. As she walked, the path before her unfolded naturally, winding through the trees with a subtle certainty, as if the very earth itself was guiding her steps. The air was crisp and cool now, the warmth of the festival's light fading behind her. The night was full of mystery, the stars above like scattered diamonds in the sky, but the path was clear ahead. It was as if the world had been waiting for her to take this step, to move forward, to follow the call of the forgotten melody. After what seemed like an eternity of quiet steps, the path led her to a high hill, where a dark silhouette rose against the sky. In the distance, she could see it clearly now, a towering structure, its shape unmistakable even in the fading light. It was a tower, ancient and imposing, with sharp spires reaching for the sky, standing alone against the horizon. The tower at twilight, a place she had heard of in passing, a place that existed only in legends and old tales. The wind had picked up again as she approached, swirling around her with an almost palpable energy, tugging at the edges of her cloak and hair. Claire's heart pounded in her chest as she stood at the base of the hill, gazing up at the tower. Its windows, dark and empty, stared back at her, and a chill ran through her as the shadows within seemed to beckon her closer. The melody she had heard earlier stirred in her chest again, faint but unmistakable, its cadence urging her to ascend, to enter, to uncover what lay hidden within. She began the long climb up the hill, the tower looming ever larger as she moved forward. The stones beneath her feet were slick with dew, and the path grew steeper the higher she climbed. Each step seemed to echo in the stillness, amplifying the growing sense of anticipation within her. The air was thinner now, and as Claire reached the summit, she was met by the sight of the tower's massive stone door. It stood before her, ancient and weathered, covered in intricate carvings of forgotten symbols, their meaning lost to time. She reached out to touch the door, her fingers brushing over the cool stone. For a moment, nothing happened. The wind stilled, the world holding its breath, and Claire felt a deep, almost sacred stillness envelop her. It was as if the tower itself had been waiting for her, and now the moment had come to open its doors. The door creaked loudly, as if it had not been disturbed in centuries, and slowly it began to open, revealing the interior of the tower. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the faintest glimmer of light filtered in from the cracks in the stone walls. The space within was vast and empty, but Claire could feel that something important lay within. Her lantern flickered softly in her hand, casting its warm glow into the darkness. She stepped inside, her footsteps muted on the cold stone floor. The interior was shrouded in shadow, the walls lined with ancient tapestries that had long since faded, their colors barely visible. At the far end of the room stood a winding staircase that spiraled upward, disappearing into the gloom. The melody, faint but growing stronger, seemed to guide her toward the stairs. It was almost as if the tower itself was calling her to ascend, urging her to climb higher, to uncover the truths hidden at the top. With a deep breath, Claire began the ascent, the staircase winding upward in slow, deliberate turns. The air grew colder as she climbed, and the darkness thickened with each step. She could feel the weight of the tower pressing down on her, its ancient walls heavy with the secrets they had kept for so long. At the top, the staircase opened up into a large chamber, the walls lined with shelves that held old books and scrolls, some crumbling with age, others untouched. In the center of the room was an altar, its surface covered in dust, but there was something about it, something that drew her in. On the altar lay a single object, covered by a dark cloth, its shape indistinct. The melody was now louder, more insistent, filling her mind, and Claire knew that this was the moment. She stepped forward, her heart racing with anticipation, and gently pulled back the cloth. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. There, resting on the altar, was an ancient harp. Its strings were dark and worn with age, but the wood still gleamed with an otherworldly luster, as if the harp had been waiting for her all this time. It was not just any harp, it was the harp of the forgotten melody, the very instrument that had once played the tune that had called her here. Claire reached out, her fingers trembling as she touched the strings. As soon as her fingers made contact, the harp seemed to come alive. The strings vibrated softly, and the room was filled with a single, pure note. It resonated in her chest, in her soul, and she felt the melody surge within her, like a wave crashing against the shore. For a moment, Claire closed her eyes, letting the music take her. She felt herself transported back through time, through the world she had left behind, back to the very moment she had forgotten. The melody that filled the tower was more than just a song. It was the key to the past, the door that would open to the truth of who she was, of what she had been seeking all this time. The wind held outside the tower as the final note echoed in the silence. Claire opened her eyes, and for the first time since she had set foot in this world, she understood. The forgotten melody had led her here, not just to the tower, but to herself. The tower, standing silent in the twilight, had shared its secret, and Claire was ready to unlock it. The sound of the harp's final note hung in the air, lingering like a soft breath, before the world resumed its steady rhythm. Claire's fingers still rested on the strings, their vibrations now a memory that echoed deep within her soul. As the last reverberations of the forgotten melody faded into the silence of the tower, a profound stillness enveloped her. But this time, it was not the eerie quiet she had felt before. It was something different. It was the quiet of understanding, the calm that comes when all the pieces of a puzzle finally fall into place. The harp before her shimmered softly, as if acknowledging her touch, as if recognizing the moment of awakening that had passed between them. But now, her heart stirred with something greater, something that pulled her beyond the walls of the tower and into the vast unknown. The melody had led her here, and now it was urging her forward. Claire took a deep breath and stepped away from the altar, her lantern still casting its warm light across the room. she knew the journey was far from over. The tower, though ancient and full of secrets, was only a waypoint, a necessary part of the path that had been laid out before her. The true journey, the one she had been called to, lay beyond. She turned to leave the chamber, but as she did, something caught her eye. On the far side of the room, where the tower walls met the ceiling, there was a narrow doorway, half hidden in the shadows. It had been so easy to miss at first, blending in with the darkness that pervaded the tower. But now that her senses were awakened, it seemed impossible not to notice it. Curiosity tugged at her, urging her to approach. She crossed the chamber, the dust beneath her feet stirring with each step, and reached out to touch the wooden doorframe. The moment her fingers made contact, the door creaked open of its own accord, as if it, too, had been waiting for her to find it. The passage beyond the door was narrow and steep, the air growing cooler as she descended into what felt like the bowels of the earth. The lantern's light flickered with each step, casting strange shadows along the walls. The sound of her footsteps was muffled by the thick stone walls, and she felt as though she were walking deeper into the heart of the tower itself, deeper into the mystery that had been beckoning her for so long. The passage wound downward for what felt like hours, until Claire finally reached a small, dimly lit chamber. At its center was a pedestal, on which rested a single object, a compass. Its face was old, its edges worn by time, but it seemed to glow with a soft, inner light. The air around it hummed with energy, and Claire felt a shiver run down her spine as she stepped closer to examine it. This was no ordinary compass. It pulsed with a strange power, as if it were alive, as if it had a will of its own. The needle spun wildly, faster than any compass she had ever seen, and as it did, Claire felt a shift in the air, as though the entire world were rearranging itself around her. The melody of the harp seemed to resonate once more, faint but insistent, and Claire understood in that moment that the compass was not pointing to a physical direction. It was pointing to something far deeper. Her heart quickened as the needle slowed, then came to rest. It pointed toward the horizon, toward something beyond the tower, beyond the land she had known, as if it were guiding her to a place that existed not in the physical world, but in a realm of dreams and possibilities. Claire's breath caught in her throat. Beyond the horizon. The phrase echoed in her mind, a gentle whisper in the back of her thoughts. She had heard it before, perhaps in the melody, perhaps in the words of the figure at the oak tree, but now it seemed clear. This was where she was meant to go. This was where the path had always been leading. With the compass in her hand, Claire turned to leave the chamber. The passage felt different now, lighter somehow, as if the very walls were breathing with anticipation. She ascended the steps, her heart pounding, her mind racing with the implications of what lay ahead. The world outside the tower awaited her, but she knew that the true journey was just beginning. The horizon, once a distant and abstract concept, was now within her grasp, a place that held the answers she sought, a place where the past and future would collide. As she emerged into the twilight, the tower behind her seemed to fade into the night, its silhouette now a mere shadow against the glowing horizon. The sky was painted in hues of purple and gold, the stars slowly beginning to emerge as the sun dipped lower. The wind stirred, carrying with it the soft, familiar strains of the forgotten melody, now a gentle lullaby in the distance. Claire stood at the edge of the world, the compass in her hand, and looked out at the horizon. Beyond it lay the unknown, vast, mysterious, and filled with the promise of discovery. She felt no fear, only a deep, resonating peace. The melody had led her this far, and she knew it would continue to guide her. The path ahead was still unclear, but that was the point. It was a journey of unfolding, of uncovering the hidden truths of the world, of herself. With the compass steady in her grasp, Claire stepped forward, her heart full of purpose. The horizon awaited, and she was ready to meet it. The air was cool as Claire stepped beyond the tower, her heart alight with the promise of discovery. The vast landscape stretched out before her, bathed in the soft glow of the fading sunset. The horizon she had once seen as distant and abstract was now so much closer, tangible and real, as if the world had shifted to reveal its secrets. The compass in her hand still pulsed with that strange, subtle energy, its needle pointing unwaveringly toward the unknown. As she moved forward, her mind buzzed with questions, her steps light and determined. The path ahead was unmarked, but something deep within her knew the way. The forgotten melody still whispered in the back of her mind, faint but ever present, guiding her through the twilight. She was not alone, she could feel that much. The woods surrounding the tower were quiet, the sounds of the festival now a distant memory. The wind rustled gently through the trees, their leaves shimmering in the fading light. Claire's breath came easily as she walked, the cool night air invigorating her, clearing her thoughts. The land seemed to be waiting, as though the world itself had held its breath for her arrival. As she ventured deeper into the woods, the sky darkened, the stars above blinking into view, a tapestry of light stretched across the heavens. The melody of the harp seemed to echo, soft and distant, as if the music was calling her to something even greater than what she had left behind. And then, just as she was beginning to wonder if the world had gone quiet, a soft glow appeared ahead of her. At first, it seemed like nothing more than the flicker of a distant lantern, but as she drew closer, she realized the light was coming from something far more magical: fireflies. Thousands of them, glowing like tiny stars in the darkness, swirling around a clearing up ahead. Their soft light danced in the night, weaving in intricate patterns, like a living constellation. They beckoned to her, their movement almost like a dance, a ritual she was meant to witness. Claire stood at the edge of the clearing, mesmerized by the sight. The fireflies were unlike any she had ever seen before. Their light was not just a soft flicker, but a steady, radiant glow, like miniature stars that pulsed in perfect harmony with the rhythm of her heartbeat. The air around her seemed alive, charged with energy, and the melody in her chest grew louder, almost as if the fireflies were part of it, their dance an extension of the song she had heard earlier. As she stepped closer, the fireflies parted gently, creating a path for her to follow. Without thinking, Claire walked into the clearing, the fireflies swirling around her, their soft glow illuminating the path ahead. The moment she entered, the world seemed to shift again, as if a veil had been lifted. The forest was no longer just a quiet, tranquil place. It was a place of magic, of transformation. The firefly's dance was not random, it was deliberate, each flicker of light illuminating something hidden just beyond her reach. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the midst of the glowing lights, stepping out from the shadows of the trees. Claire's heart skipped a beat as she recognized the figure, the one she had seen in the vision at the tower, the figure who had first whispered the forgotten melody. But now, in the soft glow of the fireflies, the figure was different. They were not cloaked in darkness, but bathed in a gentle, ethereal light. Their presence was calm and warm, like the quiet after a storm, and their face was kind, filled with an ancient understanding. "You followed the path well," the figure said, their voice soft, like the rustling of leaves in the breeze. "The fireflies are a gift, a guide for those who are ready to receive them. They are the keepers of light in the darkest of times, the ones who help reveal what the world wishes to keep hidden." Claire nodded, her heart racing with the realization that she was standing before someone who had been part of her journey all along. The figure extended their hand, and with it, a single firefly landed gently in their palm. The creature's glow was steady and warm, and as Claire looked at it, she felt a surge of understanding wash over her. "This firefly," the figure continued, "is yours now. It will lead you to the next step on your journey, to the place where the answers you seek are waiting. Trust in it, and trust in yourself." Claire reached out tentatively, her fingers brushing the glowing firefly. It was warm, its light steady and comforting, like a small sun held in the palm of her hand. The moment she touched it, a wave of clarity washed over her. She could see the path ahead, the places she needed to go, and the challenges she would face. The firefly's glow seemed to pulse with every beat of her heart, its light growing brighter with each step she took. "Take the gift of the fireflies with you," the figure said softly. "They will always guide you when you are lost, and they will illuminate the darkness when you need it most." Claire held the firefly carefully, its glow steady in her hand, and began to follow the path that the glowing creatures had created for her. The fireflies continued their delicate dance around her, their light leading her forward, guiding her through the night. The melody in her heart resonated in harmony with the rhythm of their flight, and she realized that she had come to a place of balance, a place where the light and dark intertwined, where the journey she had been on and the one still ahead of her were becoming one. As she walked, she knew that the firefly's gift was more than just a light. It was a symbol of trust. Trust in the journey ahead, trust in the unknown, and trust in the quiet guidance that the universe had provided her. Each step felt certain, as though she was not just moving through the woods but moving through time itself, toward the answers that lay beyond the horizon. And somewhere, deep within her, the melody continued to play, soft and steady, reminding her that she was never truly alone. The fireflies would lead her to the next chapter, and beyond that, to a place where the light and dark would meet, where all the secrets she had been searching for would be revealed. The night was alive with possibilities, and Claire was ready to embrace them all. The forest had transformed. What had once felt like a place of secrets and shadows now felt alive with promise, the air humming with an energy that Claire had never known. The firefly in her hand continued to glow brightly, its light a steady companion as she followed the winding path that had been illuminated by its glow. The deeper she ventured, the more the trees seemed to part, as if they were clearing a way for her, a path that led towards something far greater than she had imagined. As she walked, the sounds of the forest grew softer, more distant, until the only sound that remained was the gentle rustling of the leaves and the occasional soft flutter of the fireflies around her. There was no fear in her heart now, only a quiet anticipation, for she knew that the fireflies were not only guiding her through the forest, but also through her own thoughts. With each step, she was unraveling pieces of a story, one that had been written long before she had arrived at the tower. The firefly's glow began to dim slightly as she entered a clearing, and for the first time, Claire realized that she had reached a place unlike any she had encountered before. The trees here were ancient, their trunks thick and twisted with age, their leaves heavy with the weight of time. In the center of the clearing stood a massive stone arch, its surface covered in ivy and moss, its edges weathered by centuries of wind and rain. The archway stood tall and proud, as though it were the threshold to another world. Claire stopped just before the arch, her heart pounding in her chest. She could sense the energy that radiated from the structure, a power that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of her own heartbeat. This was the place the fireflies had been leading her to, the place where the answers to her journey lay. But she wasn't alone. From the shadows of the trees, figures began to emerge. They were tall and regal, their movements slow but deliberate. Their eyes shone with a strange, ancient wisdom, and their presence filled the clearing with an undeniable sense of authority. They were the guardians of this place, silent, watchful protectors who had stood vigil over the haven for eons. Claire's breath caught in her throat. The guardians were not like any beings she had encountered before. Their forms were cloaked in shimmering, translucent veils, their faces half hidden in the folds of ancient robes. They seemed to glow with an otherworldly light, their features shifting like the shadows cast by the fireflies. It was as though they were part of the forest itself, born from the very roots of the trees and the breath of the wind. One of the guardians stepped forward, their presence commanding but calm. Their eyes, ancient and wise, locked onto Claire's with a steady, unwavering gaze. The firefly in Claire's hand pulsed slightly, as if acknowledging the guardian's presence. "You have come," the guardian's voice echoed in the clearing, soft and resonant. "The time has arrived." Claire stood still, her heart racing. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "We are the guardians of the haven," the figure replied. "We are the keepers of the boundary between worlds, the stewards of the knowledge and secrets that lie beyond the veil. We protect this realm, and we protect you, for you have been chosen." The words sent a shiver through Claire's spine. Chosen? She had heard that word before, in the melody, in the whispers of the trees, in the moments when she felt as though the entire world was guiding her towards something. But now, standing before these beings, it felt more real than ever. She was not just a traveler, she was part of something far larger than she had imagined. "What is this place?" Claire asked, her voice trembling with the weight of the moment. "This," the guardian said, sweeping their hand toward the stone arch, "is the Haven. It is a sanctuary between worlds, a place where time does not exist as it does in your realm. Here, the boundaries are thin, and those who seek answers can find them, but only if they are ready." "Ready for what?" Claire asked, her mind racing. She had come so far, followed the path that the fireflies had shown her, but now, standing at the threshold of the Haven, she realized that the journey had only just begun. "To understand the truth," the guardian said, their voice almost a whisper now, "to see beyond the veil that separates the known from the unknown. You are here because you have reached the heart of your journey, and here you will find the answers you seek. But you must ask the right questions, and you must be willing to listen." The air around Claire seemed to hum, and the firefly in her hand began to glow brighter, its light now radiating outward, illuminating the stone arch and the guardians who stood watch over it. The clearing was filled with the soft glow of the fireflies, their light merging with the guardian's presence, creating a tapestry of light and shadow. Claire took a step forward, her feet heavy with the weight of the moment. She could feel the pull of the Haven, the call of something ancient and wise, something that had been waiting for her to arrive. The guardian stepped aside, gesturing toward the stone arch. "You may enter, Claire," they said. "But know this, once you cross the threshold, the path ahead will be revealed only to those who are ready to accept what lies beyond. The answers are not always what you expect." With a deep breath, Claire walked toward the arch. The guardian's eyes followed her, their gaze filled with an ancient understanding. As Claire stepped into the archway, the world around her shifted once again, the fabric of reality bending and warping as she crossed into the Haven. The journey had led her here, to the very heart of the unknown. And in the silence of the Haven, Claire understood that she was no longer simply a traveler on a path, she had become part of the story itself. And whatever lay ahead, she would face it with the guardians by her side, the fireflies' glow lighting the way. Beyond the arch, beyond the threshold, lay the answers to everything she had sought. And now, Claire was ready to discover them. The air in the Haven was different, heavier, yet lighter at the same time. Claire stood at the threshold of the archway, her heart beating steadily in her chest, the glow of the firefly in her hand casting a soft radiance over the mysterious realm she had entered. The guardians stood in the distance, their forms now ethereal and almost dreamlike, as if they were a part of the very essence of this place. They watched her with silent anticipation, but Claire felt no fear. Instead, a sense of profound calm filled her, as if the path she had walked had been leading her here all along. The space before her was vast, stretching into a landscape that defied the laws of the world she knew. The ground beneath her feet shimmered with a soft, silver light, and the sky above was an endless twilight, neither fully dark nor fully light. The air carried the scent of something ancient, earth and water, time and memory, all blending into a fragrance that seemed to stir something deep within her. As Claire stepped further into the haven, the soft glow of the fireflies around her began to dance in patterns that felt strangely familiar. It was as though the fireflies were showing her the way, pulling her towards something, towards someone she had known long before her arrival at the tower. The path wound through a lush, verdant forest, its trees tall and grand, their trunks adorned with glowing vines. The song of the world seemed to hum in the distance, but it was not the same melody she had heard before. This song was deeper, more layered, as if the universe itself were whispering secrets into the wind. After walking for what felt like hours, Claire came upon a clearing that seemed to pulse with the very rhythm of life. At the center of the clearing stood a large stone fountain, its waters shimmering with a light that seemed to come from within. It was here, in this sacred space, that she first saw her. Evelyn. She stood beside the fountain, her back turned, her face hidden in the shadows of her long, flowing hair. The soft glow of the fireflies danced around her, casting a halo of light, but it was her presence, not her appearance, that struck Claire most. Evelyn exuded an aura of calm wisdom, the kind of wisdom that came from a deep understanding of the world and its mysteries. At the sound of Claire's approach, Evelyn turned slowly, her gaze meeting Claire's with an intensity that made Claire's heart skip a beat. There was no recognition in Evelyn's eyes, only a profound, knowing silence. "You've come," Evelyn said, her voice soft but powerful, like a song sung from the heart of the earth. "I knew you would." Claire took a tentative step forward, her breath caught in her throat. "Evelyn?" she asked, her voice a mix of disbelief and wonder. "It's really you?" Evelyn nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "Yes." "But you already knew that, didn't you?" Claire felt a tremor of realization deep within her. The journey she had been on, the fireflies, the guardians, the melody, it had all been leading her here, to this moment. She had been searching for answers, and Evelyn was the key to them all. But how? Claire whispered, struggling to find the words. "How are you here? What is all of this?" Evelyn gestured toward the fountain, her eyes still steady on Claire. "This place is more than just a realm. It is a reflection of truths, hidden truths, truths we sometimes cannot see when we are too close to them. This haven is where all things converge, where the past, present, and future meet. It is a place of clarity, where the veil between worlds is thinnest. But even here, the truth is not always easy to see." Claire stood silently, taking in Evelyn's words. Her heart raced, her mind trying to catch up with the flood of emotions and questions. There were so many things she wanted to ask about the haven, about Evelyn's connection to it, about the melody she had heard, but it was Evelyn's next words that quieted her. "You came here for answers," Evelyn said softly. "But what you don't know is that the answers you seek have always been within you." You have known them since the beginning. Claire blinked, confusion clouding her thoughts. What do you mean? I don't understand. Evelyn stepped closer, her eyes never leaving Claire's. The firefly you carry, she said, glancing down at the glowing creature in Claire's hand, is not just a guide. It is a part of you. It carries the essence of your journey, the light that has always been within you, even when you could not see it. It is the manifestation of the truth you have been searching for. But the truth is not something you find, it is something you remember. Evelyn's words hit Claire like a wave, and for the first time since beginning her journey, a flicker of understanding ignited within her. All this time, she had believed she was searching for something outside of herself, some great mystery, some lost truth. But what if the answer was not hidden at all? What if it was always there, waiting for her to uncover it within her own heart? The firefly, Claire murmured, looking down at the tiny creature still glowing in her hand, is me. My journey has always been mine to walk. Evelyn nodded, her smile growing more certain. Yes, Claire. You have always been the keeper of your own truth. And the firefly is the symbol of that truth. It will guide you, not to something new, but back to yourself. The realization was overwhelming. Claire could feel the weight of it settle into her chest, a deep sense of peace going her as the truth unfurled like a delicate flower. She was not here to change the world, she was here to remember who she truly was and what she was capable of. The journey, the melody, the guardians, they had all led her to this moment, not to show her some distant destination, but to reveal the power that had always lived within her. Evelyn stepped back, her expression serene. Now that you understand, you must decide what to do with this truth. The Haven is a place of choices, and every path leads to a new beginning. You have the power to shape your own journey from here. Claire nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and clarity wash over her. She had found what she was seeking, but more importantly, she had found herself. As she turned to leave the clearing, the firefly in her hand began to glow brighter, and the guardians appeared once more, standing at the edge of the clearing, watching over her with knowing eyes. The path ahead was hers to choose, and with every step, she carried with her the gift of the truth Evelyn had shared. The world beyond the Haven awaited, but Claire was no longer afraid. She was ready to embrace the journey ahead, for she now knew that the greatest discovery was not in the destination, but in the unfolding of her own story. And with that, the Haven whispered its final secret to her, as the firefly's glow led her forward into the future she was destined to create. The air in the Haven felt electric now, as if the very fabric of the world was holding its breath. Claire stood still, the gentle glow of the firefly lighting her path as she walked back toward the stone arch. Evelyn's words echoed in her mind, reverberating through her heart and soul. The greatest discovery is not in the destination, but in the unfolding of your own story. The truth that had been hidden within her all this time had been revealed, not in the answers she had so desperately searched for, but in the quiet understanding of her own power and potential. The journey she had embarked upon was not just a path to uncover lost knowledge or to solve a puzzle. It had been a journey of self-discovery, a path that had led her to the deepest parts of herself. Now, as she stood at the threshold of the haven, Claire understood what Evelyn had meant. The firefly in her hand was not just a guide, it was a key, her key to unlock the final door, the final step of her journey. And that door was not a physical one. It was the door within her heart, the door to her own destiny. The stone arch loomed before her once again, but this time it seemed different. There was no longer any mystery about what lay beyond it. Claire knew now that the haven, with all its wonders and guardians, had been a mirror to her own journey, a reflection of everything she had ever felt, every doubt, every fear, every longing. It had shown her the way, but it had also shown her something far greater, the strength to continue on, not as a seeker, but as someone who had already found the answers within. As she approached the arch, the firefly in her hand pulsed gently, its light now steady and unwavering, as though it was ready to take the final step with her. The guardians, standing silently in the shadows, watched her with understanding in their eyes. The world around her seemed to shift in anticipation, the very air thick with possibility. One of the guardians, the same figure who had spoken to her before, stepped forward. Their face was now clearer, their presence less ethereal, more grounded. "You've done well, Claire," they said, their voice soft but filled with authority. "You've come far, and you've uncovered the truth that was always within you. But now, it is time to take the final step." Claire nodded, though a part of her still felt uncertain. "The final step?" she asked. The guardian gestured to the firefly, which glowed brighter in response. "The firefly you carry is the key to unlocking the next phase of your journey. It has led you here, and now it will guide you further. But this time, it will not lead you through the haven, it will lead you beyond it." "Beyond?" Claire repeated, her voice a whisper. The idea of leaving the haven, of leaving this place that had felt like a sanctuary, made her hesitate. But deep within her, she knew that she couldn't stay forever. The firefly had shown her that the journey wasn't about staying in one place, it was about moving forward. The guardian continued, their gaze unwavering. "There is one final truth you must embrace. To move forward, you must leave behind what you have learned here. The answers you sought are already yours. But to unlock your true potential, you must return to the world beyond, to the life you left behind. The final key to your journey is not here, in the haven. It is out there, in the world you once knew." Claire stood in silence, processing the guardian's words. She had come to the haven seeking something, answers, perhaps. She had found what she was looking for, but it had not been what she expected. The haven had not given her a grand revelation or a definitive truth. Instead, it had shown her the truth of who she was, and now, it was time to return to the world from which she had come. A wave of calm washed over her. The uncertainty that had once clouded her mind began to clear. She was ready. The firefly's light grew brighter still, casting long shadows across the stone arch as Claire stepped forward. She felt the gentle tug of the firefly in her hand, urging her onward, urging her towards something new. As she passed through the archway, the world around her began to shift once more. The colors of the haven seemed to fade, replaced by the familiar hues of the world outside, the greens of the trees, the soft blue of the sky, the golden warmth of the setting sun. For a moment, Claire felt a pang of longing for the haven, for the wisdom it had given her, for the peace she had found within its walls. But that feeling was quickly replaced by a deep sense of purpose. She had carried the truth of the haven with her. The final key was not in what she had left behind, but in what she was now ready to create. As she stepped out of the haven and into the world she had once known, Claire took a deep breath. The path before her was still uncertain, but now she understood that the journey was hers to shape. The final key to her journey was not something she could hold in her hand. It was a part of her, woven into the very fabric of her being. The firefly, now fading into the twilight, had given her everything she needed to move forward. With each step, Claire felt the weight of the world's possibilities pressing against her, but this time it didn't feel overwhelming. It felt like freedom, the freedom to choose, to create, to be. As the firefly's glow disappeared into the distance, Claire turned and looked back one last time at the arch, the haven, and the guardians who had watched over her. She felt no regret, only gratitude. She had found the truth she had been seeking, not in the world around her, but in herself. Now, with the final key in her heart, she was ready to embrace whatever came next. The journey had only just begun. The sun dipped below the horizon, and Claire walked forward, the world unfolding before her, open and full of potential. The road ahead was open, stretching endlessly into the horizon, bathed in the soft, golden light of twilight. Claire took a deep breath, the scent of the earth fresh in her lungs, the air crisp with the promise of something new. The journey she had undertaken had been long and winding, filled with unexpected twists, moments of doubt, and flashes of clarity. But now, at the end of the road she had traveled, she understood something essential. It was not an end at all. It was a beginning. As Claire walked further from the arch, the weight of her decision to leave the haven, of everything she had learned and understood, settled into her bones. The world before her seemed to welcome her back, the familiar sounds of birds calling out in the distance, the rustle of the wind through the trees, the rhythmic flow of a nearby river. It was all the same, yet it felt different. More vivid, more alive. Perhaps it was because, for the first time, she truly saw it, saw herself reflected in it all. The firefly, now but a memory, had already faded from her hand, its light a part of the very essence of who she had become. But the wisdom it had carried, about the truth she had always known but had to remember, remained, wrapped around her heart like a warm embrace. She had learned the most important lesson. The key to the life she desired was not hidden somewhere in the world, it was within her all along. She arrived at the edge of a small village, one that seemed unchanged by time. The cobbled streets, the thatched roofs, the vibrant gardens, all were exactly as she remembered them. But as she walked through the village, something shifted inside her. The people she passed still greeted her with their familiar smiles, but Claire no longer saw them as strangers or fleeting moments. She saw them as part of her world, part of the life she had once left behind. Each step she took felt intentional. Each breath she drew felt meaningful. Claire knew that whatever was ahead of her, she would face it with a newfound clarity, the wisdom of the haven now woven into the fabric of her everyday life. The mystery of the world wasn't something to be solved. It was to be lived. And so, she embraced the world with open arms. Claire found herself standing in front of the cottage she had once called home. It was as if the moment she had left it all those weeks ago had happened in another lifetime. Yet here it was, unchanged, standing as a quiet witness to the transformation that had taken place within her. It felt like the right place to be. She stepped inside, the familiar creak of the wooden floor beneath her feet sending a ripple of nostalgia through her. The cottage, too, felt different now. It wasn't just a place to rest anymore, it was a space to create, to breathe life into new beginnings. As she walked to the window, the last remnants of the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of deep violet and soft pink. The sky, like her life, was in transition, always shifting, always evolving. A small smile touched her lips as she gazed out at the world that lay before her. The firefly's light, though gone, still flickered within her. It was the spark that would guide her through this new chapter, a reminder that everything she needed was already within her. Days passed, and Claire found herself returning to the routines she had once known, but with a new sense of purpose. She had no more answers than she had before, but that was no longer what mattered. It was no longer about seeking something outside herself. It was about living in harmony with the world, and most importantly, with herself. She began to rebuild the life she had left behind, only this time it was different. The choices she made were not driven by fear or the need to please others. They were guided by a quiet inner knowing that had been unlocked within her, a knowing that told her she was exactly where she was meant to be. One evening, as she walked through the village square, Claire overheard a conversation between two strangers. They were speaking of a journey, one similar to the path Claire had walked not long ago. She paused, listening as they spoke of searching for answers, for meaning in a world that often felt too big and too complicated. They were unsure of where to go, unsure of what to do. Claire smiled softly to herself. She understood that uncertainty. She had lived it. But now, she could see the light at the end of the tunnel, the truth that had eluded her for so long. It wasn't something that could be given to you. It was something that could only be discovered by walking through your own life, with all its messiness, beauty, and unpredictability. And so, Claire approached them, offering a simple piece of advice. Sometimes, the answers you seek are not found by looking outward, she said, her voice steady and calm. They are found by trusting what you already know within. And then, when the time is right, you step forward. The rest will follow. The strangers looked at her curiously, but Claire could see that something had shifted in them, the way their posture had softened, as if they, too, were beginning to see the world through a new lens. They thanked her, and she continued on her way. Later that night, as Claire sat by the fire in her cottage, she reflected on all that had happened, the haven, the firefly, the guardians, the mysteries she had unraveled. But what struck her most was how much she had changed, not because of the lessons she had learned, but because of how she had allowed those lessons to shape her. The final key had not unlocked a destination. It had unlocked a way of seeing, of living. It had unlocked a path that was uniquely hers, one she could walk with confidence and joy, knowing that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, and new uncertainties, but Claire was no longer afraid. She was ready to embrace it all, knowing that the journey was never about reaching some final destination. It was about how you moved through the world, how you embraced each moment, and how you let the light within you guide you forward. And so, as the moon rose high above the village, casting its gentle glow across the fields, Claire looked to the future with a heart full of hope, knowing that this was only the beginning. A new beginning. Her beginning. The firefly may have faded, but the light within her would never dim. The story was hers to write, and she was just getting started.